I have been an Italki community tutor since 2019, when that was a side job for me. And over the years, I've collected a lot of information from students and from just experience about what works and what does not work on Italki. I think I have a unique perspective because I have been teaching on Italki for so long, but at the same time, I'm also an avid language learner, so I know what students want because I am also a student. So I want to share the knowledge with the open internet about all these great tips that I've learned over the years that may be useful for you if you are thinking about becoming an Italki teacher, or you already are an Italki teacher and want to take your tutoring to the next level. This is also valid for any form of language tutoring, so it doesn't matter which language you're teaching or what platform you're using, or if it's face-to-face, these are still valid tips for you. Tip number 1 is to know your niche. I've noticed 2 really major camps when it comes to language learning. Students are either going to be focused on something formal, either they want it for their job or they want a specific test, or they want some formal qualification in a language. Or there's the kind of learner that just wants to improve their conversation skills, be able to interact with speakers of the language. And for the purpose of this video, I'm going to call one group the formal learners and one group the casual learners. I'm talking about their goals here and not how hard they work. You as the tutor cannot make everybody happy, so you need to know who your target audience is. Do you want somebody who is a more formal learner, someone who wants the test, or do you want someone who has the conversation? Because these 2 groups are very different. I think the formal learner wants you to seem professional, wants more examples, wants you to know the test very well. And I think those casual learners want to know more about everyday speech. They're not so interested in the hoity-toity, theoretical, abstract stuff. And you need to play to that. You cannot make everybody happy, so you need to know what works best for you. I don't have formal qualifications in teaching English, so I tell people who want to work for a test that I am not the teacher for them. I know because you have a financial incentive to have someone as a student, you might want to change your habits for them, but it's not going to work out well. I remember having a student who really wanted to pass the TOEIC test, I think, and they wanted to practice the speaking portion with me. And I could sense he got kind of angry because I didn't know anything about the test, but I didn't show on my Italki profile that I knew anything about TOEIC. So I should have been more upfront with this person and said, dude, I'm not the right teacher for you. Do you want to market to one country or a group of countries? I think because of the languages I list on my Italki profile, I do attract more Russian people, Chinese people, Japanese people, Korean people, and it seems like they are the types that want native speakers more. So you need to be aware of what that country wants. There are some people who don't need a native speaker. They're okay with that based on their goals. Do you have language skills? Are you willing to market that? Because you don't want to enter a situation where someone's a complete beginner and you said that you are fluent in this language and you're not fluent. Let people know directly how good you are in a language and how much they can rely on that language. For me, I try to have all of my classes in English just because I think it's more productive, but I let my students know, if you can't think of the word, I probably know it in your native language, if it's a language that I've learned. And it's not so good to hide that you know the language, because it'll make them feel more comfortable. They are not necessarily going to always switch to their native language. You're not forcing them to speak the language if you don't tell them you speak their language. You are just making them more anxious. If they know that you speak their language, they'll feel comfortable to have that open conversation and not try to avoid the words they don't know. They'll be like, oh, how do you say this word in English? The second tip that has saved me so many times over the years is having materials prepared for every student's weaknesses. It sounds like the opposite of what I just said, but not quite. What I mean by this is you probably want some reading resources, some writing resources, grammar resources, anything that can be a difficulty for students. With time, you'll learn what you are missing, but I can give you a couple examples of things that have been so helpful for me over the years. For those students who want to learn more grammar, I have 2 grammar books that I scan and take lessons from, get examples from. I have 1 textbook that is a free online PDF, which you can link to through a QR code. And I have dozens of my own lessons based around certain topics. So for example, if many students are very confused about some grammar point, I'm probably going to create a PDF made by my own words to explain that grammar. I'll use examples that are really helpful, and I'll use those textbooks as some inspiration. I'm not going to lift them directly because that's just a waste of time. I can just scan them if I want to use them. You might want to reword it if you want to make it unique, and there's some important information that those textbooks are missing. For students that want to learn lots of vocab, you can prepare lots of topics for every lesson and relevant vocab related to each topic. So for example, if we wanted to talk about money with a student, I mentioned all the words about credit cards, debit cards, online shopping. I really tried to dig deep for those words that nobody knows but are really important, like rounding up and rounding down. That happens all the time when you're shopping, and that might be relevant to bring it up. I don't define these words for my students, I just copy and paste this document into the messages with them every time and give them a little preparation for the next lesson. They'll feel much more comfortable because they'll know what we're talking about, but they don't feel completely lost because they have some words that they can use. It's also helpful for you because it can give you something to talk about. Some students have difficulty describing things in front of them, so what I do for those students is I have a group of pictures and I have several questions related to those pictures. What's happening here? What do you think is going to happen after the picture? What happened before the picture? What is your opinion about something related to the theme of the picture? This is really helpful for any topic because it only takes about 3 or 4 pictures and maybe 4 or 5 questions per picture. And it'll fill maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour from discussion. A skill that a lot of students are lacking is being able to describe a word in other words using circumlocutions to avoid the word they don't know and still make themselves understood. So for this, I like to create lists of vocab words that are really obvious that everybody knows: tomato, shopping, cooking, and asking the student to explain it in other words. Right, you know, it's made from 2 words here. We have notes and book. So note is usually like a small piece of writing. Usually we want to remember it. This can help the flexibility of their language, and I think it's had great effects for those students. For students who want to do some reading, I send them an article before the lesson and ask them to just read it once. During the lesson, we'll discuss it. You should be careful here because BBC or some major news source is usually a little too advanced for them, but there are a few really good English learner news sites on the internet. You should use those instead. For those students that like YouTube videos, I like sending them those 10-minute little documentary or edutainment videos. Something like Vox is really good for my lessons. Preferably, these videos have subtitles. You can ask them about the video, you can ask them their opinion. I'm not a fan of catching my students slacking. I just want to have a conversation for them. I want them in their own time to work on their listening comprehension and then me supplementing it. Tip number 3 is you need to be willing to show the effort you will make for the student. Students are really impressed when you put an effort for their lessons and individualize things. For example, recently I've been trying to make these lesson roadmaps where I plan 5 lessons ahead about some main topic, and within that topic we can have different types of lessons. We'll have the article lesson, we'll have a word description, we'll have a picture description, we'll have an open discussion, and by the end of this 5 lesson stretch, hopefully they can speak about this topic much more freely, they feel more comfortable about this topic, and hopefully during these 5 lessons they always know what's coming. For me, it's not so much effort because, like I said, I have all these pictures, all these words, all these grammars already collected on my computer, and I just have to put them together based on the topic they're interested in. If they want to talk about food, it's really easy to find an article about food. It's really easy to find like a documentary about like school lunches or something. It's really easy to find some pictures on Google about food or some classical art where people are eating. I put that all together, and for them it's really clear where these 5 lessons are going to go, and it shows that I'm willing to put an effort for you. I've noticed students really appreciate when you're not just like trying to take their money in those 30 minutes. You're trying to maximize their money while minimizing your effort. You're not going to keep students for long if you do that. My 4th tip is to pretend to be an extroverted conversationalist. When I started giving Italki lessons, I was so shy, I was so socially awkward, but I kind of pushed myself to be more pleasant and happy. And
the grammar's right on that. The better sentence would be to talk about the exact interruption, meaning when the handyman knocked on the door. That's even better, right? That's a one moment that interrupts it.
Be more conversationalist and extroverted, even though that's not really me.
Hello. Hi. Sorry, I'm a little late. How are you doing today?
I think Italki teachers need to realize that students are always going to be 10 times more scared than you are. You might be scared to talk to so many people on the internet. Those students are speaking with a stranger on the internet in a language they are not native in. They are very scared. So your job should be to comfort them and be able to use their language skills. If they're way too focused on like sweating because they said a wrong word and you looked at them funny, be really open and chill and comfortable. Even if you want those formal students that want to study for the test, those students are also scared. Focus on making things relaxed. Don't try to increase the tension. Awkward silences feel like so much longer for the student than for the teacher, so you should be the one filling them. I always try to lead the conversation, always try to ask follow-up questions in order to continue the conversation. I don't want a moment of silence in this lesson because it is so awkward and the student feels really embarrassed if there is a moment of awkward silence. There's a few ways you can do that. You can try to ask a follow-up on everything they're saying. You can repeat what they're saying, go like, right, yeah, in order to keep the conversation flowing.
Right, you have to speak slowly, but I think there's something good if foreigners speak to each other. There's something good because they don't use very difficult words.
If you reword things, you're actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone because you are removing the awkward silence, but also teaching them how to reword some phrase. Maybe they only know one way to say something, but if you say it in other words through the conversation, they realize, oh, that's another way to say it. Don't allow awkward silence. For me, that's like a golden rule. In my lessons, I always start by asking my students, how have you been? What's been going on with you since the last time we talked? And there's like 10 variants of this in English. How are you? What's up? What's going on with you? What's new? And I love when the student gets confused and they don't understand my question because it's a teaching moment. This is another way to ask, how are you in English? They know how are you, but they might not know what's new with you. Or what have you been up to? So that is my knowledge that I've collected over the years, put in a nice little basket and given to you. Hopefully this will help some tutors online to make better lessons. If you would like to see more from me, I have my social media linked below. I also have a website at studywithalex.com where I talk about language related things, and I also answer many questions I've heard from students through my lessons. So thank you for watching today's video. I'll see you for another one very soon, alright? Bye-bye.